Good idea. Plus, as part of our ongoing investigation into sex offenders in Alaska, tonight, see if the state deals effectively with offenders who don't comply with the registry.
This is CBS 11 News at 10.
Good evening. New at 10 o'clock tonight, a Palmer man is behind bars charged with distributing child porn from a coffee stand. State troopers say they arrested 26-year-old Roland Goosen yesterday for internet child porn file sharing and failure to register as a sex offender. They say following an undercover online investigation in January, detectives found dozens of files on Goosen's computer at Custom Coffee, which is just off the Glen Highway. Goosen's bail is now set at $50,000. This week, CBS 11's Grace Jang has been looking into the sex offender registry. Tonight, she takes us inside the courtroom to see how the state deals with sex offenders who are not properly registered.
How the state did extend enough to Mr. Harden today.
Nelson Harden is a sex offender convicted for sexually assaulting his coworker back in '96. He's being arraigned on one felony count of failing to register as a sex offender.
The state prosecutor has just indicated that they've made you an offer apparently for a misdemeanor plea, be a sentence of 180 days in jail with 90 days suspended. You'd have to serve 90 days.
Just like that, a sex offender with a history of failing to register is sentenced to 3 months behind bars instead of a maximum of 5 years. His charge has been reduced from a felony to a misdemeanor. The next case is that of Richard Lee Smith. CBS 11 News was there when police arrested Smith for being non-compliant for failing to register as a sex offender.
I was actually just in court for not being in compliance, and I was supposed to turn myself in on the 5th, and they came in here and got me today.
According to court records, this is the 5th time in 7 years Smith has been arrested for failing to register.
If I may clarify, Mr. Prosecutor, I did not move or anything like that. It was just a fact of not realizing that I had to go back in the next month to redo it.
The state is contesting the facts, and we're going to give them a dismissal.
The case is declined, bail's exonerated. Questions?
No, sir. Okay.
And just like that, the state drops the charges against the man who has repeatedly been charged with failing to register after being convicted of raping a 16-year-old girl. Smith is free to go. As for that March 5th hearing, Smith never showed. So in the span of 1 hour, the state reduces the charge against one sex offender and completely dismisses one against another sex offender. Now, this comes just months after the governor and the state's attorney general vowed to tackle the state's sexual assault problem head on.
In crimes generally, you have to make priorities.
Bill McAllister is with the state's Department of Law.
You can only have so many jury trials. There are limited resources, in the courts and in the department. So you have to decide, who are the worst offenders that you're going to go after and not offer deals and take them to trial.
Meanwhile, Harden is serving his 90-day sentence in Palmer. I spoke with him on the phone.
I forgot to register for 2010 because I was still home. I was registered as homeless before when I was released, and I registered at Brother Francis Shelter. But when I moved from Brother Francis Shelter, I was given a place to stay by a friend, and I forgot to register within 24 hours, and that's how I violated it.
As for the crime that first landed him on the sex offender registry,
I never raped a woman. The only place that I touched a woman was I touched her on her leg, and the things that I suggested were improper.
Wait a second, you're telling me that you were charged, prosecuted, and convicted for just saying something to your coworker and touching her leg?
Yep.
Well, Mr. Harden, I've got court records here that show that you did much more than touch her leg.
Take into mind that I did suffer a serious head injury. In 1985, I spent a month in a coma, and I damaged both frontal lobes of my brain. There are some areas in my past that I can't recall completely.
Sergeant Dennis Allen arrested both Harden and Smith.
These guys fall in a little bracket that nobody's watching.
Sergeant Allen is one of the creators of the sex offender registry, but sex offender compliance is technically a state responsibility.
Echo Papa Alpha 197.
One that falls on the Department of Public Safety. Meg Peters is a spokesperson.
Not all departments have the luxury of being able to do those checks. There isn't one person that's tasked with going out to everybody's known location to see if they're actually there.
I have a solution, but it would take manpower, and that's the problem.
Does the public have the will, does the legislature have the will to spend unlimited amounts of money to check on compliance of sex offenders.
McAllister says State Attorney General Dan Sullivan spent much of last week in Washington, D.C., meeting with Attorney General Eric Holder and Vice President Joe Biden about getting federal money to tackle the state's sexual assault and domestic violence problem. Now, as for whether we get that federal money, and if so, whether that money will be used for sex offender compliance remains to be seen. In the studio tonight, Grace Jang, CBS 11 News.